I never cared much for birthdays. They were just another day. Wake up, go to work, come home, repeat. But turning 40 felt different. It wasn't just a number. It was a line in the sand, a moment that demanded reflection. I hadn't expected anything from the day, but then my eldest son, Marco, called out of the blue. His voice was casual, as if he were asking about the weather, but what he said lingered in my mind long after the call ended. He told me that he and his brothers, Julian and Troy, wanted to throw me a real birthday celebration, a proper one. I didn't know how to respond at first. We hadn't been close in years, not since the divorce shattered everything 8 years ago. Their mother, Clarissa, had walked away, saying I was a good man but passionless, steady but uninspiring. She wanted more, and I hadn't fought her on it. The boys naturally gravitated to her side, and I understood. She was their mother, after all. After that, I faded into the background, keeping my head down, working, paying bills, and trying to be the kind of father they could rely on, even if they rarely saw me. Dependable, yes, but invisible too. So when Marco suggested this party, something stirred in me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe this was a chance to bridge the distance that had grown between us. Maybe this was a sign that it wasn't too late. After the call, I stood in my quiet apartment, staring at the plain walls, the battered couch, the coffee cup still sitting in the sink. My life wasn't exciting, but it was mine. And now, suddenly, there was a hand reaching out from the past. I couldn't help but smile. I walked to my closet and pulled out a decent shirt, one I hadn't worn in ages. Plugging in the iron, I tried to smooth out the wrinkles, though I was never good at ironing. It still ended up with creases, but somehow the act of preparing for something felt important, like I was stepping toward more than just a party. The day arrived quicker than I expected. I found myself thinking about what it might be like seeing my sons together again. Maybe we'd laugh like we used to when they were kids. When weekends were spent at the park, me pushing them on swings while Clarissa snapped photos. Those days felt like another lifetime, but maybe, just maybe, this night would bring back a small piece of that. Driving downtown to the taproom Marco had chosen, I parked my aging car and took a deep breath, smoothing down my imperfectly ironed shirt. My palms were damp, my stomach tight, not just from nerves, but something else, something almost like excitement. The moment I stepped inside, the warm, lively energy of the place hit me. The air was thick with the scent of beer and fried food. Laughter hummed beneath the music, and the space was already brimming with people. My eyes scanned the crowd, recognizing faces I hadn't seen in years, co-workers, old neighbors, even a few distant cousins. Then I spotted him, Marco, his grin wide and effortless, the same charm his mother had always carried. He waved me over, and beside him stood Julian, leaning against the bar with an air of coolness I had never quite mastered. Troy lingered near the edge of the crowd, quieter, always the observer. "Happy birthday, Dad," they all called out in unison. For a moment, I felt awkward, unsure of how to stand, what to say. But then I grabbed a beer, started talking, and to my surprise, the tension inside me eased. For once, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own life. And then I saw her. Clarissa. She moved through the crowd effortlessly, like she belonged there, like she always had. Her hair was immaculate, her smile sharp as ever. Seeing her stole the breath from my chest. We had exchanged only the necessary words since the divorce. Discussions about the boys, practical matters, nothing more. And yet here she was. I told myself it made sense. She was their mother, after all. Of course, she'd be here. I took another sip of my beer and forced myself to push the thoughts aside. The night was supposed to be a celebration. People clapped me on the back, joking that I didn't look a day over 30. I laughed, and for the first time in years, it felt real. For a little while, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was a new beginning. Marco kept glancing at his phone. Julian murmured something to Troy. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too busy soaking in the rare warmth of the moment, surrounded by the people who, despite everything, still seemed to care. I ate my wings, wiped my fingers on a napkin, and leaned back, letting the night settle around me. The hum of conversation wrapped around me like a warm blanket, the scent of fried food and beer thick in the air. I made small talk with my cousin Dave about his new fishing boat, even cracked a joke that earned a few genuine laughs. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged, like maybe, just maybe, my sons truly wanted to celebrate me. That this milestone birthday wasn't just an obligation but something that mattered to them, too. I sank into a chair, the cool weight of a beer bottle resting against my palm, and let the moment breathe. It felt good. More than that, it felt real. I should have seen the storm coming. But I didn't. I only saw a chance. A chance to feel like a father again. A chance I hadn't had in years. I should have known better. Morning came quietly. No hangover, no weight of regret, just a strange sense of stability. Not lighter, not heavier, just solid, as if something had finally clicked into place. The night before, something inside me had shifted. A switch had been flipped. I had cut the cords they didn't even know existed. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about respect. About reclaiming the dignity I had let them trample over for far too long. I poured myself a coffee, strong black, no sugar, and sat at my kitchen table, the ceramic warmth seeping into my hands. The apartment was still, save for the slow, rhythmic drip of the kitchen faucet I'd been meaning to fix for months. I didn't turn on the TV. Didn't check my phone. I already knew what was coming. And I was ready. The first move was Marco's mortgage. I logged into the bank's website, navigated to the automatic transfers, and with a single click, stopped the payments. $1,500 a month, gone just like that. I didn't feel guilty. Marco had never asked me to cover it. Never thanked me. He didn't even know I'd been doing it. A short, simple email to the bank followed. Discontinue payment effective immediately. Done. Next was Julian. The account I'd set up to catch him when his gambling spiraled out of control. I froze it. Locked it down tight. No more covering his losses. 500 here, 11,000 there, all disappearing into a bottomless pit of bad bets and broken promises. I pulled up old screenshots, texts he'd sent me at his lowest, begging for money, swearing he'd stop. Lies, all of them. I forwarded those messages to Aya, Marco's wife. No explanation. Just a simple note. You deserve honesty. She didn't need to know that I had been the one bailing him out. But she deserved to know who he really was. And then there was Troy. I logged into the university's website, stopped the tuition payment for next semester, then emailed his landlord, withdrawing from the lease I had co-signed. He would have to figure it out on his own. If he needed help, maybe Clarissa could step in for once. Leaning back in my chair, I took a slow sip of coffee, the bitterness grounding me. Then I waited. It didn't take long. By noon, my phone buzzed to life, a wasp's nest of anger and confusion. Marco called first. His voice was tense, edged with panic. Dad, what the hell? I just got a foreclosure notice. Did you stop paying my mortgage? I kept my tone even. Tired. Your mortgage, Marco? That's your house. He stammered, grasping for an argument. But we were good. Things were okay. And now this? Sounds rough, I said simply. You'll figure it out. He hung up, frustrated, confused. The next message came from Aya. Short. Cold. Julian's a mess. Why'd you send me that? I didn't reply. She left Marco that afternoon, packed a suitcase, and walked out after reading those texts. Julian was next. Drunk. Furious. His voicemail was an incoherent mess of slurred curses and wounded pride. You're a bastard, Dad. Locking my account? I need that money. What the hell is wrong with you? I listened. Deleted it. Then Troy's call came in. Quieter, but no less angry. Dad, my tuition's due. The landlord says I'm out next month. Why would you do this? It's greedy. Selfish. That word lodged itself in my chest. Selfish. 3 years I had covered his tuition. His rent. 3 years of working overtime. Of putting my own life on hold to make sure he never had to struggle the way I did. And now I was selfish. I let the silence stretch before I finally spoke. Troy, I've done a lot. Maybe it's time you start doing too. He didn't argue. He just hung up. Clarissa's message arrived last. A text, long and dripping with her usual self-righteousness. Grayson, this isn't you. Be the bigger person. Stop this petty retribution and help the boys. They're hurting because of your choices. My choices. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I could have told her about the 50 grand I had sunk into Marco's house. The thousands I had burned on Julian's debts. The tuition and rent I had covered for Troy. I could have told her about the overtime shifts, the sleepless nights, the way I had sacrificed my own life so they could live theirs. I could have told her how, while she had been playing the perfect mother, I had been the one making sure they stayed afloat. But I didn't. Instead, I set the phone down on the table and let her words hang there unanswered. She would never understand. And for the first time in years, I didn't care.